Hey everyone, my name is David Grinberg. I'm the founder of Green Mountain Advisors, and I'm here with John Richards, the founder of Ignition Startup. Am I getting that right?
Startup Ignition. Yes.
Startup Ignition. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mixed it up. Well, anyways, John, you have a massive background in investing and building companies, and I'd love to, hear more about what you do, how you got to where you are today, and what got you started and motivated to keep going.
Great. Go ahead. You fire away. I'm all ready.
So if we go back to, you know, year one, let's say, what were you up to in your business journey? Did you go to college? How did you get started in the professional world?
Yeah. Well, my background, and I hear a little echo in the background. I don't know if you hear it or not, but the my background goes back to college where I was pre-med. I actually, it's kind of funny. As a child, I really loved entrepreneurship, and I did a lot of entrepreneurial things that were just interesting as a kid. But at some point in high school, I got the idea that I wanted to be a doctor. So I was pre med during college, got accepted to medical school, but my senior year of college, I discovered that I really didn't want to be a doctor, which was interesting. So I snuck into some business classes and rediscovered a love for business and entrepreneurship. And instead of going to medical school, I went to college out of state in Utah. I'm from Seattle, Washington originally, and I went back to Seattle and got involved in entrepreneurship, and specifically in the Yellow Pages arena because I am an old guy. So I graduated college in 1985. During my senior year in 1984, one of the biggest business events of the century happened, where American Telephone and Telegraph, AT&T, the old Alexander Graham Bell business, was declared a monopoly by the federal government and broken into multiple small companies, making it was the most powerful company in the world, and it was made weaker so that competitors could compete. And so I went into the business of competing in one of their lines of business, which was Yellow Pages, which was a lot of young people don't know what Yellow Pages is anymore. But before Google, when we wanted to look up a person or a business and find out information on them, we had a book that was published once a year in each market, and that was called a Yellow Pages directory. And so I became a publisher of Yellow Pages in the Seattle, Portland area in the United States.
Okay. And then what happened after that? What made you say, okay, I'm done with Yellow Pages? And
Well, that was a kind of a 12-year odyssey. I mean, I became from a small little startup into a much larger publisher, going from one publication to 44 different publications in the greater Seattle and greater Portland, Oregon area. And there was then a lot of investment activity in this arena because it became lucrative. The Yellow Pages industry under the Bell system, the old phone company doing it, was extremely profitable. And even independent publishers that started competing against them had very high profit margins. We're talking net profit margins of 25%, 50% for the Bell company, and 25% for an independent like me. So it was a very lucrative industry. I know many, many people that on just credit cards started companies, became multimillionaires by competing in the Yellow Pages arena. And so I did that for 12 years, brought a lot of innovation. Instead of just black ink printed on yellow paper, started doing what are called knockout ads, where it was white paper with yellow ink and black, so you could make the ads pop out more. Then eventually we did 4-color printing and had 4-color photos and pictures in the phone book, and then started doing different technology things until ultimately, about 12 years in, I discovered the internet was coming. And in 1994, I launched internet version of the Yellow Pages, which was remember Netscape, which gave birth to the internet era, didn't happen until 96. So I was toying with putting Yellow Pages and White Pages databases up on the internet in the very early days. And then in 95, I showed it off at a trade show that was sponsored by Bill Gates of Microsoft. And I got a lot of attention for what I was doing, and I decided there was a real business there. So I started an internet Yellow Pages company. And then in 96 era, when Netscape went public, and the graphical user interface, Netscape Navigator, which was formerly called Mosaic, was a graphical browser for the internet, allowed graphics to be on the internet. That started changing everything, and I got a lot of attention. So I actually sold off the print company and went all in on the internet company. And that eventually, I merged in with some people from Microsoft that had left Microsoft, and we formed a company called InfoSpace, and that became the largest online Yellow Pages directory. And it went public in 1998. So we started. I joined up with those three Microsoft folks in April of 1996, and so 2.5 years later, about four of us grew into about 1,500 people, and we're public with a company that just caught the .com wave really strongly and became one of the most trafficked search engines and directory companies on the internet. So that's kind of my story of going from print Yellow Pages into technology and the internet. And so when it went public in December of 98, a couple of years later in 2001, I was kind of saying, well, I've got enough to retire. So should I retire? I'm only 39, 40 years old. And instead, my alma mater, BYU, Brigham Young University in Utah, invited me to come down and head up entrepreneurship programs. And I didn't know if I wanted to do it, but I ended up deciding to do that. And so I moved back from Seattle down to Utah, where I've been ever since. And for about a dozen years, I became an angel investor in the Utah market and helped run top universities' entrepreneurship programs. And BYU went from unranked to number 2 ranked in the world for entrepreneurship as a university. And we just had a good run on that. And then I've been an avid angel investor, for the 22, 23 years I've been in Utah, and very active now also with a venture fund. And I've mentored thousands of entrepreneurs and just enjoy that. So there's your life history of me. There you go.
I love it. What was that like, kind of experiencing the wave of, the .com bubble, doing well in it, and then seeing the aftershocks of that?
Yeah, well, it was a crazy time. I was a pretty young guy, and I just, the money flowing. What happened, actually, to give some historical context to it, there was a bad thing happening in Japan called the Asian flu, which was actually a financial epidemic problem, where Japan had a roaring 1980s. Japan was at the top of the world in 1980s. And then at the end of the 80s, 1990, 1991, Japan started having stagflation, and really that went on. It really hurt Japan. And in 92, there was so much fear in the United States that this contagion, financial contagion, would spread to the United States. In 1992, when Bill Clinton got in, they just spiked the money supply. So they increased the amount of money in the system to a huge degree. And then the internet hit in 96, which brought, the ability to network and connect and all the things the internet has brought. And you combine that with an abundance of cash in the system, and then the zany, companies popping up by college students getting overfunded with tons of money, and IPOs going like crazy. It just was so combustible. It just created this incredible time period where companies became so overvalued, including our company became so overvalued. It was just insane. And so that was a wild ride. And then, of course, it crashed. And in March of 2000, I remember it was March 14th of 2000 was the first day of the beginning of the crash. So from March of 2000 all the way through the end of the year, it was down, straight down. And then it got even worse in 2001. And then when 9/11 happened in September of 9/11, it was basically, party was totally over. And the internet really crashed hard and didn't recover till about 2003. So the .com bubble was an incredible good, bad, and ugly. And then the .com bust was very severe for tech companies and really was a tough time. So it was that taught me a lot about cycles, and there's boom and bust period, and it's happened 05, 06, it went crazy again. And then we had the 08, 09 crash. And then we had a big run up after about 2012, we started a big run up that went till 2021. And then here we go, 2022, it crashed again. And so as a business person, and with my angel investing and venture investing, I understand cycles now. And so we never deploy money in the bubble time period. We only deploy in the down trough period and then ride the next wave up. And that's what we're doing with our venture fund right now. We started our fund in 2022 2022, we've made 19 investments, and we've deployed our capital at really good valuations with really good companies. And then we expect now to ride the bubble up now that we've been through the trough, and we hopefully will have another, ride up, and we'll ride those up. And that's kind of how the cycles of the macroeconomy are very important to our venture investing.
And how do you think about valuations for these types of companies if they're, getting angel checks, or are you
We're
also?
pre-seed investors, so we use the science of lean startup to not only help entrepreneurs do better as entrepreneurs, but also to do our due diligence and determine which are the best investments. So we really focus on business model validation and whether they've done the work to really validate a business model. We don't like to fund people during the search for a business model. We want to fund them right as they've found their business model. Some companies don't have a business model, get funded, and then squander a lot of the money trying to find the business model. We think you can find a business model very cheap before you get funded, which is the principle of lean startup, and then use the money to actually scale instead of just continue to figure out your business model. So that's kind of what we do. Is we are pre-seed investors, and we measure them for how much validation they've done on their business model and whether they've really truly nailed a repeatable and scalable business model. And if we find a company like that, and we're the first investors, and we can get in with a good value, decent valuation, and get it's more, I don't know, a lot of listeners might not understand that venture investors are looking for the percentage they get when they put in their money is more important than the valuation or the amount. I mean, we don't write checks larger than 750,000, but it's usually 250 to 750. And our goal is to get, with that being the first investor, maybe they did a little friends and family, but being the first investor, we would want to get about 12 to 20% of a company for that money that we put in. And, they're often pre-product, but almost all of us pre-revenue, but we also have some we've done post-revenue.
And it sounds like, your early years of working, with Yellow Pages and then experiencing .com were key for you understanding that distribution is everything, and, product market fit, the idea that marketing and tracking. I mean, to me, we have an ad tech business, and running attribution on ad tech is difficult enough as it is. Running attribution on Yellow Pages must have been a nightmare.
Yeah, well, yeah. Except for Yellow Pages, really, there was the only competitor to Yellow Pages was classified advertising in newspapers, and that was not that much competitive. But the classified advertising would try to say, hey, if you're the 24th full page ad in the Yellow Page publication, you're not getting the same number of calls as the first, ad in the Yellow Pages under your category. So do more in the classified ads and see if you can get business. But both of those industries have been decimated, of course, by the internet. But we used to run tests. You could order a number from the phone company that only published in an ad, and then when the company got calls in on that phone number, they knew that the advertising was working for them. And so Yellow Pages in its day, when it was the only game in town, was very lucrative, and it worked. I mean, the categories that got the most business out of Yellow Pages, which were like restaurants, auto body repair, dentists, medical clinics, HVAC, home services, all these type of things that lived and died by the Yellow Pages. They had to be in every Yellow Pages that published in their area. If they didn't, they lost tons of business. And that was really, really important back in the day.
And where do you see in 2025 the most modern day Yellow Pages? Is it still Google, or do you think ChatGPT or one of
Well,
those?
I don't know. Well, we all know the tumultuous time happening right now. I mean, last quarter was the first down quarter in Google's history with searches, which is interesting. Think about that, and what the LLMs, the large language model AIs, and ChatGPT and Claude and DeepSeek and Grok and everything, and what impact. ChatGPT is, I guess, the number one still, and it's taking away a lot of searches. But you just have to ask that. I mean, when the transition was going from Yellow Pages to Google, I would say, like, let's call it the year 2000, 2002, 2003, I'd say, how many have used Yellow Pages in the last 30 days? And there'd be 100 people in the room, would be one person. That's how. So that's what. And I say, how many of you used Google in the last 24 hours? And everybody would raise their hand. And now I just am doing that right now in the last 6 months in the same way, and it's fascinating. 100 people in the room, and I say, how many use Google search? Um, and and then you have most people do that in the last 24 hours. How many have used ChatGPT in the last 24 hours? And it's almost as much as Google. I'm going, what the heck? I mean, we always wondered for so many years who was going to unseat Google, which was probably in US business history the strongest monopoly ever created, was Google search. Back about 12, 14 years ago, I'm not sure exactly when, Microsoft spent $10 billion marketing for 2 years Bing and got only 2% market share. So, I mean, what monopoly is so strong that a competitor with unlimited money can come in and spend $10 million in marketing and only get 2% market share? Think about that. That tells you how strong Google was, and everybody's going, what was going to knock Google off of its throne in the search business? And now we see it's AI. It's doing something. That's why I think Google's really facing a real dilemma on what they do with search versus Gemini. And I've heard, I don't know if it's true. I've heard that they're beta testing having the front page of Google not be the search box, but the Gemini box with about 100,000 users to see if it makes a difference. So we'll see what happens there. That's going to be one of the big stories of the year, I think.
And it's something nobody's looking at, really. I think everybody's caught up in all the politics that's going on, that people aren't actually paying attention to the stuff that drives revenue.
I mean, if I listen to the All In podcast very regularly, and they've been discussing it on what, 2 of the 4 main people think that Google should right now throw away search and go all in with Gemini and do that. But that's a lot of money to throw away and to play with. So they're trying to figure that out. They say, but this is, I don't know if you've heard of the book by Clayton Christensen, Innovator's Dilemma, and this is the classic Innovator's Dilemma now. So Google completely disrupted and killed Yellow Pages and a lot of other things with their search model. But now the Google search model is being threatened by AI. And the question is, most of the time in the Innovator's Dilemma philosophy is that the incumbent leader is so scared to change that they don't change, and then a disruptor takes their business away from them. And so Google has to decide if they're going to be their own disruptor, or they're going to try to hold on to Google AdWords and all that revenue and then let another company steal it away because they become the dominant AI go-to. I mean, it's interesting. Out of 100 people now, if I were to say who's used ChatGPT in the last 24 hours, I'd say about 60 raise their hands. That's pretty significant.
And it is. And it's going to get bigger and bigger as time goes on.
Yeah, exactly.
So throughout the years, how have you, because I see this all the time, we do advisory work and we have our own holding company with entrepreneurs, and they're always struggling with, staying healthy or maintaining relationships or having some other spiritual balance or something outside of work. I've spoken with several very successful entrepreneurs who, towards the end of their career, they focus on more philanthropy. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, how have you been able to manage, your health, your relationships, and your general well-being mentally as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the reality is I've helped countless entrepreneurs become multimillionaires. And I'd say about more than 50% after creating wealth lose their families. So in other words, divorce and a lot of unhappiness, which is interesting. So a lot of, there's the old saying, money doesn't make happiness, but it sure makes it easier to be happy, that kind of thing. But there's a lot of problems that happen with wealth creation that if you're not on solid footing and foundation, you can really mess up. So I've been lucky. I have a tremendously incredible wife, and we've been partners all along the way, been married 42 years. And so about halfway through my career, she let me know that my, extreme working, we're not meant to be workaholics, but while we're building a company, we're going to be out of balance. And if the family has to understand and accept that there's going to be a period of being out of balance. It's not meant to be forever. One of my mentors in life taught me this important saying. It says, work a few years like no one else will, to live the rest of your life like no one else can. So if you work a crazy imbalanced way for, let's say, 4 to 7 years, but then have the freedom for the rest of your life to do whatever you want, that's one way that can happen. That's what entrepreneurship be. Entrepreneurship not be, I'm going to work till I die, 60 hours a week and just be a workaholic. That's not the point. So about halfway through my career, my wife taught me two important principles, which is I needed to be home for dinner and be with the kids for a couple hours and have dinner, read them stories, get them ready for bed, and be with them. I wasn't doing that for a lot of years. I was told her I'd be home for dinner and then would come home at 8 or 9 p.m. and that was not working well. And so we sat down and I learned to manage expectations really well from that, because I said I'd be home by 6 and I started coming home at 5:45 and all of a sudden was a hero instead of a goat when I would walk in at 8:30 or 9 p.m. And then also kept great relations with my kids. And I just did that from then on and understood. And she said, hey, at 9 o'clock, you can go back to work if you want to. You can do whatever you want after 9 p.m. But from 6 to 9, I need you here with the family. And so, and that really kept a lot of happiness and balance in our life. And that was really good. And then when I sold the print publishing company, I did okay. The internet company gave me enough not to have to work again. And so then my wife said it was payback time. I go, what do you mean? She goes, well, for the last 17 years, I've been through a lot, and now we're going to do and get some of the rewards. And so we started traveling, and because we hadn't taken a lot of vacations, that's for sure. And then I taken the teaching job instead of going back into another operational grind business, allowed a lot of freedom. And my oldest were teenagers, and then I had some preteens. And I was able to be with them for a lot of years. And just today, all 4 of my kids and 8 grandchildren live within 20 minutes of me, and we all get together Sundays for dinner. And that's the lifestyle we chose, and that's how we keep balance and health. My wife and I are constantly going to, annual checkups and doing all the right things the best we can. All of us could lose a little weight, but that's how life is when you get older. So, but that's kind of a summary of my life.
So how old were you when you had your first child?
When I had my first job?
Child.
Oh, child. Very young. So I got married at 21. Then actually we had a stillbirth the first time, which was a real sad experience. So I would have had one in 84. So that would have made me 22. So the next year, but instead we had one in 85. And so I was 23.
You're 23 years old when you had your first.
Yep.
Boy or girl?
Boy.
Wow.
He's a lawyer now. He went to the dark side. And so we had 4 kids by the time we were 30 and we're done. And so we always had the slogan 50 and free, that we thought we'd be free by 50. And we were. The kids were past 18, all of them, by the time we were 50 years old. But we also discovered that parenting after 18 is just as involved as parenting before 18. So it takes a few years till they get off and get married on their way. But yeah, life's pretty good. We've had a pretty good run. We have great kids and no major problems. So we're happy.
And you're seeing right now these industry trends, or maybe not industry trends, just general social trends, where people are having kids at later and later ages, and the population in general is kind of
22-year-old girls or women, or excuse me for calling them girls, but our young women are trying to freeze their eggs because they don't expect to have kids till they're past 35. And when you go past 35, the eggs of the human female deteriorate pretty badly and can cause lots of problems. So they're freezing 22-year-old eggs and saving them for later. And it's kind of an interesting way to go in life, but that's happening because of those industry trends. And but there's a lot of data also showing that married entrepreneurs outperform unmarried entrepreneurs. Kind of interesting. And some of the traditional family life can really empower situations. Everybody's got to make their own lives and choices, what they want to do. And for us, we're very kind of traditional. My wife could have been a CEO of any company she wanted to be, but she chose to be the CEO of our family on a day-to-day basis at home and let me have the freedom to work pretty long hours and work. And then, but to this day, we've everything's been working great, and we're really happy. She's really happy, and she has lots of interest. And later part of my life, you asked about that. I've made, done a lot of charity things too and all that. But I also realized that my greatest contribution to society is probably helping other entrepreneurs do good things and bring great products and services to market is probably the best way, since it turns out I just have a skill and a love for teaching and helping others understand principles. And so I've got a good track record of teaching and educating and helping and mentoring entrepreneurs.
Is there a business that you're particularly the most proud of that you're allowed to talk about today?
That I've helped, or
that you've helped.
Well, there's a lot of them. I mean, my best investment ones, the ones that I invested in, had great returns. I'm really proud of, because it was, I mean, like there's a B2B SaaS company called 4Up for golf software management, and I mentored them from day one. They raised only $200,000 and got to just under $100 million exit, and it took about 9 years, but you can imagine how much they kept for themselves. When they sold, the employees and owners owned about 92% of that company still. So that doesn't happen in the venture world very often, and people, how did they, but you don't have to. We really ascribe to our philosophy in venture is there's two major paths to go down in venture. One is raise money fast, get big fast, and go for the gusto and go for the, unicorn and try to just go for it big time. But a lot of times that's really hard, really stressful. That destroys family life. There's a lot of pressure on those entrepreneurs, and most don't make it through that gauntlet. But if I'm a venture firm with $400 million, I give $40 million to 10 companies and have them go do that. If one of them becomes a $3 billion company, then I'm still happy, right? But what happens to the other 9 companies? So with us, we kind of believe that entrepreneurs should raise only the amount of money they need, keep a lot of equity for themselves, and you can sell out for 100 million and make just as much money as you would selling out for $1 billion, because you keep so much of the equity as the founder. Does that make sense? And have a much less stressful life.
And there's more consistent cash flows or dividends from
and they learn how to get cash flows coming in instead. I mean, I can't tell you how many companies I've seen. It was a disaster going from 2021 to 2022. The money raised by entrepreneurs in 2021, and then all they did was immediately, like one classic story was this: 6 million equity raised. Silicon Valley Bank gives them a $2 million loan on top of it, so they have $8 million. They go immediately to a $350,000 negative cash burn, run for 2 years at 350 negative cash burn, get to about August 2023, run out of money, lay everybody off, and fail. That's not a fun way to do business. I mean, in summer 2022, the market was telling them you should lay off most of your people and be very conservative with your cash because we're in for a tough 2 years. Nope, they just kept spending the money every month.
Do you think that that's a lack of financial management, or
it's just young people not been through business cycles? I mean, when 2022 hit, so many people under 35 years old were in total shock, like deer in headlights, because they had literally gone from graduating, let's say 2008 to 2012, 2014, come out into a business environment that went straight up for like a decade. From like 2011, 2012 to 2021 was easy. If you had a pulse, you could make money and you would do well. And so that was easy. And then all of a sudden 2022 hit and they were like, what is going on here? I mean, the ZIRP period, zero interest rate period, time where money was free. You basically paid very little for money and you could put it to work, and these valuations were going up. I mean, that's when, but I've had to talk people off the cliff that were used to that environment. And then 2022 was bad. 2023 was worse. And 2024 was even getting worse until election day. Up until election day, even like going from Q2 of 2024 to Q3 of 2024, the venture world had a massive fall off. and people didn't know what was going on, who was going to win the elections, where the economy was going, and so it was terrible. Then in 2020, the election day in 2024, we got more of a pro-business administration in. People said, okay, maybe we can do stuff. There's still a lot of money on the sidelines because they printed so much money, quote unquote printed money, and so then it's been easier time coming back. But for those 2 years, from 2022 to 2024, literally really bad environment for young people that had not been through any cycles. The cycles are very important to learn as an investor. Venture is just as susceptible to the business cycles as any other asset class. It's basically whatever the Fed does with interest rates is what's going to happen, right? So not a hard thing to follow.
Yeah,
I think we're over time here. I've talked too much. Sorry about that.
No. I mean, I'm interviewing you. I love to learn about this kind of stuff and listen to people who've got more experience than me. And so, it's the pleasure is mine.
I hope it's been a good half hour together. So
it has been. And for the listeners watching or on the radio, we're not on radio yet, but maybe we will be eventually. How can people find you?
Startupignition.com is our website. We have a boot camp for entrepreneurs. We have an academy that's online for entrepreneurs, and we have our venture fund, Startup Ignition Ventures, and you can find all about it there at startupignition.com. And my email address is really easy, jrichards@startupignition.com.
Awesome.
All right.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.